Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to episode 58 of the Alec Walt Show. I'm your host, Alec Walt, alongside another very special guest. And today, we're talking about the Chicago Bears. The Bears have made their head coach and general managers hires. I told my friend Andy Hopper here we were going to talk about these hires once they made them. They are official today, and that is why we're looking at my good friend Andy Hopper from the Brew Party Podcast. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Alec, it's a pleasure, as always, to be here. I always love coming on the show and ranting and raving about the Chicago Bears. And ladies and gentlemen, they did it again. Matt Eberflus is here, along with Ryan Poles, the general manager. If your name is Matt or Ryan, you are a candidate for a job with the Chicago Bears. The next logical step is signing Matt Ryan to come back up Justin Fields now. But anyway, happy to be here. I had told you before the show, you broke the news to me this morning. I was at work, and I saw your message that just said "why" in all caps, and here we are. Excited to talk about it.
Yeah, well, after my first reaction to that was like, I'd rather them go the offensive route. We're gonna get into a bunch of things, Chicago Bears here, but that is why I said why, because I really thought they would go in that direction here. But let's start here. They did make one hire before they hired the head coach. That was Poles, who's coming in from Kansas City. I said this exact same thing to Kyle Russo on our podcast. The other day, you could check that out here on Down the Block Sports. When you hire a general manager, you want a track record. The Kansas City Chiefs could potentially be going to their third consecutive Super Bowl. They have been consistently successful in the draft and free agency. The track record's there, and it seems like you guys made a pretty decent hire here for your next general manager.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that went from fighting to be on this roster during his NFL career to now running the show. He's been given a lot of credit for his work and help in finding guys to plug and play on this Kansas City offensive line.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at I think they're starting 3 rookies this year that are just playing out of their mind. And we are going to need a lot of that in Chicago. It sounds like as soon as he came in, as soon as he was hired, he immediately took over the head coaching search, which I love that, showing some, balls right away. I don't know if you saw the video or if anybody did on Twitter. I was pretty surprised, to be honest, that he took the job because they fucking sent McCaskey to pick him up at O'Hare. They didn't get a car service. They didn't get a limo. There's a video of fucking McCaskey walking through O'Hare, picking up Poles, not inconspicuous at all. He's got a Bears Letterman jacket on, a Bears face mask. It's just that this is all the McCaskies know. It is Bears football. They're all about tradition. I was actually listening to an interview with Brandon Marshall a couple days ago. Played for Denver, played in Chicago, played a few different places, and he was just talking about how sometimes, culture is very important, and sometimes it's tough for teams like Chicago to target these big guys in free agency or get these big guys in free agency because there's just too much little shit that the McCaskies care about. Like, we have to wear this height of socks. Where there's all this little stuff in the locker room that needs to be just like the 1950s. Well, it's not the 1950s anymore. Okay, this isn't some. You'd like to think if your family has owned this team for long enough, you'd start to know just a little bit about football, and that is what hopefully Ryan Poles is here to do. And it just feels like some of these organizations, they just set these guys up to fail, and it feels like that has happened a few times here in Chicago. So. I mean, I'm excited. I was excited about the Poles hire. Anytime you go, it just like you said, there's a track record there with Kansas City. He's been a part of a winning organization, one of the best organizations in the NFL for the past few seasons. And you'd think maybe if you go with a young first-time GM, you go after an older head coach, some guy with experience. That's why Dan Quinn and Jim Caldwell were finalists for this job, along with Matt Eberflus. But I guess it just speaks to, how much they think of Eberflus for him to be the one to get picked for this job. But I think I was more excited about the GM hire. It's a little more of a sexy hire than the Eberflus hire for sure. But I mean, I'm not rooting for them to fail. I think I was when you had me on the show a couple weeks ago to talk about potential candidates. I was all in on guys like Dayball, guys like Brian Flores. If we were going to get a defensive guy, I would have loved Flores, but that's why I'm not in charge.
Yeah. So thank you very much, by the way, for your name down here, right here, for teaching me how to pronounce Eberflus. For those of you who do not know how to pronounce his name, Andy just made it easier for all of us here on Down the Block Sports. So give us a little bit of a breakdown on Eberflus. Obviously, he's coming from a team that had a very good coaching staff, but just had the worst possible Week 18 performance they could have put together and blew it and didn't go to the playoffs. But who is he and what do you think he's going to provide here for the Chicago Bears?
Listen, so he's the first head coach or first candidate to get a head coaching job after just that complete debacle and giving up what felt like 1 million points to the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 18. But here we are. So he's been the Colts defensive coordinator for the past 4 years. They have been top 10 in the scoring defense for 3 out of 4 of those years. And then in 2019, I believe they were like 16th or 17th, but they were only giving up like 21.5 points a game. Every report, every article I've read have talked about how he is kind of a no-nonsense guy, which I like that. He wants his players to work hard. He emphasizes, what coach doesn't want their players to work hard? But, he emphasizes, kind of going to work, the grind, that type of stuff. He plays more of that Tampa 2 style, which Bears fans are going to be very familiar with, especially, you remember the Lovie Smith days, the coach that got us to the Super Bowl, the coach that got fired after going 10-6, which was just ridiculous. But I mean, he's coached he started at his alma mater, Toledo. He was the defensive coordinator at the University of Missouri from 2001 to 2008. And then after that, he made his jump to the NFL with coaching with guys like Rod Marinelli, who's maybe a candidate to come take the defensive coordinator job here. I know his linebacker coach from Indianapolis is following him to Chicago. That could mean a promotion there for him. But as far as Eberflus, the Colts went from 30th to 10th in scoring defense in his first year, 30th to 11th in total defense, and 26th to 8th in rush defense. So that's quite a jump in your first year taking over a defense. The guys in Indianapolis, the players seem to like him. Obviously, you saw what Darius Leonard was able to do at the linebacker position for the Colts the past 4 seasons. You look at a guy like Roquan Smith and what he's been able to do for the Bears. I only see that getting better. I think part of me thinks this move may have something to do with how much money the Bears have invested in their defensive line. It's over like $100 million into this defensive line. You're talking about guys like Khalil Mack. You gave Robert Quinn a bunch of money, and he just broke the sack record this year. Eddie Goldman, Akeem Hicks. I don't know if you're losing Hicks this offseason or not. But Eberflus feels like a really good coach. He's getting his shot for the first time as a head coach. I believe he's 51 years old. Not too old, but enough experience. He's been, I think, 3 different stops in the NFL, the Cowboys, Cleveland, and somewhere else, I think. For me, really, the question is who's going to be the offensive coordinator? Like I just said, with the track record, he's top 10 scoring defense. He believes in keeping the ball out of the end zone. I will mention this. I've got a good buddy that is a Colts fan, so I texted him this morning just to get his thoughts. So I said, Bears just hired Eberflus from the Colts. He's pretty decent. And he goes, you want my optimistic answer for you or my Colts fan answer? And first he goes, enjoy prevent defense starting at kickoff. I'm sure he'll really help Fields' development too. Not. So I don't love that. And he sent me a screenshot from the first quarter of of the Jags and Colts game. You're probably not going to be able to see this very well, but they're in prevent. It's 3rd and 10, and there is not one person in the secondary within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So I don't love that, and that's in the first quarter. The optimism, though, is the takeaways are insane, and the points allowed per game are insane as well. I love the turnover mindset, the peanut punch, and to have that hard-nosed mindset back. And it's not like the Bears have had a bad defense. The defense has been the strongest part of this team for pretty much ever. Like we've never been a great offensive team. So And I mean, if you follow the Bears or you're a fan of the Bears or whatever, we should have seen this coming. It's a guy that nobody talks about. It's a guy that we don't see coming, but a guy that had been there from the beginning. He was one of the first guys they interviewed, and from the first interview, he made an impression good enough that he was immediately a finalist. From at least what I read and what I heard from Rappaport, he has interesting ways, or the ways that he talked about wanting to build this team intrigued polls and the front office. Obviously, Bill Polian was a part of this search as well. So I don't know, man. I don't know a lot about him, but from what I have read, and as I've read more about him, it feels like it might work. It's the big question is, who's the offensive coordinator? Who's going to be calling plays? And something that we, as Bears fans, probably should be okay with, go get a guy that's going to be boom or bust and may get poached for a head coaching job. That'd be better than anything we've had in, I can't even tell you how long. Go ahead. Sorry.
I say, like, if you're in that situation, if they're getting a head coaching job, it means they did a good job working with Justin Fields.
Exactly. And I know people are worried about him, having to learn a new offense. And since Eberflus is a defensive guy, it's going to be the offensive coordinator who's going to be calling the plays. And let's say they get hired and go somewhere else, the potential that he's going to have to learn another offense isn't great. But I mean, he's a young guy. And obviously, if the Bears are committing to Poles and Eberflus what would be going into Fields' only second year in the league, I think it'll be okay. The real question for me is, like I said, are we going to go get a guy, an established offensive coordinator? Or are we going to go get like a quarterback's coach? Or where do we go from here? As far as Eberflus goes, he's now the second Frank Reich offensive coordinator to get hired as a head coach in as many years. So Sirianni last year for Philly, now Eberflus to Chicago. Hard-nosed defense. He wants to take the ball away. It's going to be a little different from the 3-4 that we're used to seeing Chicago play, but bring back that nastiness, bring back the swagger, and get a guy that's going to develop this quarterback and see where it goes. I've heard that they're potentially looking at the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree for offense, and that would mean more, play action, running the ball, which all for pounding the rock with David Montgomery. So we will see.
Well, you talk about coming over from Indianapolis, their offense was power run.
Yeah.
So even though he's not specifically going to be in charge of the offense, I do think he'll bring some of those plays with him to Chicago. So you mentioned a lot of Justin Fields here with, how this offense is going to work and the coaching staff and building the right staff for the quarterback. Do you agree with the decision, knowing how important it is for his development these next 2 years?
See, if it was me,
you'd have Bieniemy.
I'd go get the enemy. I'd go get fucking Brian Daboll, and I know
Daboll might go to the Giants.
Yeah, imagine going from fucking Josh Allen to Daniel Jones. I'm sorry, Brian.
The adjustment.
And I'm not going to sit here and say that Fields had a great rookie year, because it wasn't. He was a little turnover prone. They were only 2-8 in the 10 games that he started, so it's not like he came out and wowed, but he showed a lot of flashes. And it just feels like when you go and you move up and you lose all the draft capital you had and make a move like this to get a guy like Justin Fields, I just don't know why you wouldn't want your head coach to be, more offense centric and more, towards the development of this guy that's supposed to be your franchise quarterback, something that we haven't had in God knows how long, which I will put a counter on that, see how many times I say that during this interview. But maybe, when they hired Matt Nagy, he was the Chiefs offensive coordinator. Maybe there was still some hesitancy there because he was supposed to be this quarterback guru when he came over, and it just ended up not really working out. It's been very interesting. I mean, you go back to when the Bears hired Mark Trestman. That didn't work out. He was an offensive guy. John Fox was a defensive guy. That was a train wreck too. Really, the last coach that did anything worth a shit was Lovie Smith.
Yeah,
a defensive guy, and you hire a guy in Matt Eberflus that's coming in also from that same coaching tree as Lovie. He's worked with Rod Marinelli, a guy that is very experienced in that Tampa 2 defense, and it kind of feels like they're trying to bring that energy back. But yeah, if it was me, I'm taking an offensive guy. There are so many just innovative offensive coordinators, young guys, or just people that I don't know, a lot sexier hire, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not a sexy hire, but if it works out, you won't hear any complaints out of me. But that just makes the offensive coordinator hire so much more crucial.
Yeah.
And I know there are Bears fans that were on Twitter. I saw a lot of a good friend of mine, Caitlin Leaner from the Bear Down Girl podcast, was not sold on Dayball at all. She thought it was just a flash in the pan. She thought, it's more
I disagree with that.
more Josh Allen than Dayball, but which I disagree with as well. But I did see she wasn't the only one. I saw other people that weren't as sold on Dayball, but man, I think if I had my pick, it was him or Flores were my two favorites. And I think I said that the last time I was on the show. But it just felt like a weird move, one that you didn't really see coming. But if it's one that Poles stepped up and made the decision that that's the guy he wants, then I think we have to trust it until we're proven otherwise.
Are you surprised how quick it took to hire the coach, knowing that Poles was hired like 2 or 3 days ago?
Well, I thought they were going to hire a coach before they hired a GM. So not really. Well, I mean, with this organization, it's such a dumpster fire. But yeah, you would have. I probably would have liked, maybe him to get a week under his belt of the GM, unless this means they were in talks for quite a while, and they kind of said, what would you think about this? We're thinking about this guy. I mean, I don't know how it worked. Obviously, I'm not in Hallis Hall, but probably not the best that it happened this quick, but that's also the market for the NFL, right? It's like these guys are going. We just saw Hackett from the Packers get hired, Byron Leftwich go to Jacksonville, and I think it was kind of, you don't want to wait too long because the guy might not be there anymore.
Yeah. Could you imagine if number 12 followed him to Denver? You'd probably be pretty happy about that, wouldn't you?
Oh, I love it. Please. By the way, that was maybe my favorite. That was one of the favorite games I've ever watched in my life. That was just
watching him lose.
Watching him lose. That was beautiful. At home, you're the one seed at home, and you put up 10 points. He said 2 years ago when they lost to the Niners in the NFC Championship, he, as in Aaron Rodgers, we need to get one of these at home. It's different when it's 20 degrees and snowing at Lambeau, and you put up 58 total yards of offense in the second half. But no, let's blame the special teams, which have been terrible all year. But, it was just glorious. The last dance, we call it the last choke. But, yeah, I absolutely hope he's gone. Just 10 years of Jordan Love for them with good luck.
Yeah, no, it did not look good when he replaced him against the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, I understand it's the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that could likely be heading to the Super Bowl for the third consecutive year. But in the windows we've had to see Jordan Love, it has not been pretty. When you look at the division, say Rodgers leaves, the Lions are going nowhere. The Vikings will find a way to finish 500, whether they're in a division with the greatest quarterbacks of all time or the worst quarterbacks of all time. Mm-hmm. And then here sits the Bears with a new head coach and a new GM, as they look to hopefully take a step forward with the development of Justin Fields. So my final question to you, if you had to put a grade together just for your reaction, what you've seen, Poles is here, your head coach is here, Eberflus, thank you again for the pronunciation.
You're welcome.
Would you have to give just an evaluation? How would you say the Bears did here with these hires, and what would you give them as a grade?
I'm going to say a B. And
I was just about to say that.
I'm going to say a B, and it's because it's not a sexy hire. There's not a lot of shock value. It's like, I don't look at it and go, oh shit. Like, yes. But I look at it and go, okay, this might work. And then, I mean, for anybody that's listening to me talking to a microphone, I'm usually wrong about things. So I didn't know enough about, Eberflus to really have an opinion that I felt comfortable being like, okay, this sucks or this doesn't suck. Was it the guy I wanted? No. But I'd say a solid B because, and I'm factoring in the Poles hire into that. I like that, they weren't scared to go back to Kansas City, and they went and got a guy that not only played for the Bears, played for multiple organizations, former player. I like that aspect of being a GM and just, his reputation as far as building an offensive line, which is something that we have needed for the past 3 seasons. And it's not just the offensive line. They got to go get some more weapons. We
Yeah.
don't have a first round pick, but I believe the first pick they have is either the second or the third round. That's got to be a receiver or a tackle, and you better pick one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you did just take Jenkins and Borum at tackle. It's got to be a lineman. So it could be a tackle, it could be a guard, but you need somebody for him to throw the ball to. Let Jimmy Graham walk. We've got Cole Kmet, despite me not being in love with him either. I think he could be good. Darnell Mooney's your number one guy, but he's got to have somebody else to throw to.
Yeah.
It's a B right now with the potential to move up to a B plus or an A minus, depending on the offensive coordinator hire and what they just really do to not only build this staff, but build up this roster. And we'll see. I mean, hopefully it's only up from here. I think a lot of this is going to have to do with the front office as well, the ownership here, the McCaskies, Ted Phillips, the CEO. They need to let the football guys, the football people, make the football decisions. And if that means backing away and only handling the money stuff, so be it.
Yeah.
Because I know I mentioned earlier, it's literally, they're not like most of the owners in today's NFL where they're business people and they made their money in another venture and kind of bought a sports team because for fun, for shits and giggles. They've owned this team since the 1950s or whatever. It's been in their family forever. It's all they've known. It's like a small business to them, really. But B is my grade. I hope it works out. Wasn't the sexy hire, wasn't the guy I wanted. But if you look at the numbers and what he was able to do in Indianapolis, pretty impressive. I know a couple games this season. Talk about the Jaguars. I think against Baltimore, they gave up a few leads that they probably should not have given up and lost a couple of those games. But new chapter. Hopefully it works out. Bear down. Eberflus.
Hopefully it works out for you guys, Andy Hopper. I'm excited for the Bears. I hope they have a chance to move their way up in the division, hopefully with the Packers here. We'll have to see what happens with Princess Rogers. But the Bears have made their decision. They have replaced the guys with the guys who had the first name of the people they used to have, which, again, is extremely weird. I'm happy you mentioned that before we went live today. But the Bears should be interesting this offseason in year 2 of Justin Fields.
So... yeah, it was like Mike Greenberg or whatever made some dumb joke. It's like, well, if the nameplate on his office just said Matt or Ryan P, then they're not even gonna have to change it. It's like, what NFL franchise do you know has their GM's name, first name and first initial on the door? There's no way in hell. But it is really funny, and that is a classic Bears thing too.
Yeah,
it is. From Ryan Pace to Ryan Poles and Matt Nagy to Matt Eberflus. We have a type. We just have a type, I guess. If you're named Matt or Ryan, you should apply to any job within the Chicago Bears organization. And then Matt Ryan, the quarterback, should probably, stick his name out there in free agency. It just feels like a natural fit at this point. Couple names I want to throw out for offensive coordinators that I would love, that I don't know if it would happen, but some names that have been talked about. Pep Hamilton. A lot of coaching experience in the NFL. Houston's quarterback coach this year. And God damn it, Davis Mills looked pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I would not mind him. He's been around a lot of different football programs. He was a head coach in the XFL. Shout out the DC Defenders. But he's just a name that's been floated out there. Mike McDonald I saw in an article, which I don't know how you're going to get him to leave San Francisco to come here, just because he is a Shanahan guy. The draw, I think, is that he could come here and call plays, and it would be his offense because he's the offensive coordinator, but Shanahan's calling plays. And then it's other guys that's similar to that. But I think my top 2 that I would love, I'd love Pep Hamilton. I'd love Mike McDonald. I don't know if you're going to get Mike McDonald to leave Shanahan, but I mean, we've seen it done before as well. I think the Rams offensive coordinator was also on this list of the article I read.
We were talking about him on the head coaching show.
Yeah. And it was similar because you saw Sean McVay let Matt LaFleur leave to take the Tennessee offensive coordinator job a couple years ago to get some experience as a play caller. He turns that into the Green Bay job. So if we get an offensive coordinator that comes in and kills it for 2 years and gets a head coaching job, that's a win. That's a win, and I think that's who we should be hiring. That's who we should be targeting. I don't know if you're going to see Pep Hamilton in the door and out in 2 years, but I don't know. He's a respected name. And I just really, really thought he did well with what he was given Davis Mills in Houston this year. I know obviously David Culley got the axe, but hire Rod Marinelli to be the DC. I saw some people calling for Lovey to get hired as the defensive coordinator, which would be full circle and really hilarious if they did that. We'd have to drop an "I'm coming home" video for Lovey.
Oh God!
If that happened, that'd be so funny. But go get a good offensive coordinator. Build this offense, play tough defense, and just no more chicken shit football, no more cutesy, no more jet sweeps on 4th and 5 or wildcat formation on 4th and 2. Run the damn ball. Let Justin Fields get out into space, which is why I think this play action offense could suit the Bears really well. You let Justin go out on bootlegs, make plays with his legs, and you hand the ball off and to your big bruiser, David Montgomery. I know you wanted to keep this short, so that's all I got for you, bro. But I hope it works out. I hope it works out.
I hope it works out for you guys too. The NFL is a better league when teams like the Bears are relevant.
Right.
So I really hope all this turns out and we get to see Justin Fields in the playoffs and the Bears making some steals late in the draft. Let's go. You guys are turning into my team in your division, even though I don't really have one. But you're turning me into a fan, Andy.
We'll take it.
Let's go. Let's go. Go Bears. Bear down.
Bear down.
So for any of my listeners here who want to listen to you rant more on your podcast, where can they find you?
Of course, you can find me wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, or you can just go to www.thebrewparty.com. It's got links to all of our social media, links to all of our episodes, and ways to listen. You can listen right on the website or link you to your favorite podcast player. We're also on YouTube, youtube.com/The Brew Party. We release 2 episodes every week, so we drop an interview every Tuesday, and we do our weekly gambling segment, Maloney's Moneyline, every Friday, live streamed at 6:30 p.m. So that'll be tomorrow at Friday at 6:30. We're giving out some betting picks for NFL championship weekend, conference championship weekend. And then, so check me out. The Brew Party. I have my 100th episode coming out on Tuesday with comedian and my friend Carmen Morales. She's the first ever female to work the door at the Comedy Store, and she is a hilarious touring comedian. So that really won't be sports on Tuesday, but I like to give you a little bit of everything. It's a lot of me drinking Busch Light, shooting the shit, and not taking myself too seriously. But check me out at The Brew Party on Twitter, Instagram, and then we're at The Brew Party Podcast on Facebook, and then youtube.com/The Brew Party for all of my content. Alec, as always, dude, I love joining you on the show. Always a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again for joining me. Check out all things Andy Hopper, The Brew Party, all forms of social media. Check him out right now. Let's go. Bear down, baby. That's going to be it for this episode of the Alec Walt Show. I'm Alec Walt alongside Andy Hopper. What do you think of the Chicago Bears hire? Do you think they made the right decision? Feel free to give me your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more of my exclusive content. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you very soon.